Hi, everyone, and welcome to Val Talks Pets, the forum for pet parents and enthusiasts alike. Having been in the pet industry for over 10 years now, I'm going to share with you issues and questions that arise as I work with pet parents on a day-to-day basis. I am not a veterinarian, but I do have certifications in canine, feline, small animal, fish and herptile, and avian health and nutrition from the University of California, Davis Extension. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Val Talks Pets. In this episode, I will dive into the history behind cat domestication. How did cats become pets? The domestication seems to have gone very well based on the popularity of having a cat or cats. So let's get into it. Cats are mammals and come in so many varieties, from your common house cat to fancy purebred cats. Our little carnivores have been around for a long time. But how long? There is evidence that the world had wild cats roaming different areas. For example, the Scottish wild cat roamed the north of Britain up in the Highlands of Scotland for centuries. Unfortunately, the Scottish wild cat, over the centuries, has bred with domestic cats, and this has rendered the animal genomically extinct. Science.org points out, starting in the mid-1950s, more than 5% of the genetic markers in Scottish wild cats began to resemble those of domestic cats. After 1997, that figure jumped to as high as 74%. As Science.org states, the Scottish wild cat has been wiped out by breeding with domestic cats. After 2,000 years of isolation, a few decades of interbreeding have rendered the animal genomically extinct. Today, there is the Royal Zoological Society's Saving Wildcats project. Wildcats have been evidenced in many parts of the world. Many experts believe that all domestic cats descended from a Middle Eastern wildcat, Felis sylvestris, which means cat of the woods. This is so funny because we all know Sylvester the cat, and Felis sounds like Felix, who was a cat. So I think someone was doing their homework when these cartoon characters were created. According to Smithsonian Magazine, cats were first domesticated in the Near East, and some of the study authors speculate that the process began up to 12,000 years ago. Well, there we have it. Cats easily began being part of the human domestic world at least 12,000 years ago. As the Smithsonian points out, once humans began to settle into farming and housing, storing grains, etc., cats showed up because mice were becoming more prevalent. Hence the symbiotic relationship of cats controlling pests. Carlos Driscoll, an author of a study in a research journal entitled Science, stated, "We think what happened is that cats sort of domesticated themselves. Cats joined the domestication party, bringing their great hunting prowess and some very likable traits, so people wholeheartedly embraced these little carnivores, enjoying their company and respecting the work they were doing." We know that the Egyptians revered cats, and ancient Romans, as the Smithsonian points out, held a reverence as well. Unfortunately, as the Smithsonian states, for some reason, however, cats came to be demonized in Europe during the Middle Ages. They were seen by many as being affiliated with witches and the devil, and many were killed in an effort to ward off evil, an action that scholars think, ironically, helped spread the plague, which was carried by rats. Not until the 1600s did the public image of cats begin to rally in the West. Check out my episode on myths about cats and their mysterious behavior. So, the cats we see today originated from the Near East, from the African wildcat, about 10 to 12,000 years ago. According to different studies, cats made themselves quite welcome with their hunting skills and ability to join into domesticity. I can see that. Today, we see our average cat, but there are also purebred cats. And the question I wondered is, how did these breeds come to be when cats originated from the African wildcat? According to catworld.com, domestic cats spread across the globe along well-established trade routes of merchants, forming distinct land races, which is a locally adapted species of animal who has adapted to its environment over time. As cats ended up in different parts of the world, they adapted. The Norwegian forest cat has a long, thick coat to handle cold weather, for example. Some cats, like those that arrived in Asia, remained isolated. This is shown by their genetic differences compared to European and African cats. As Cats World states, breeds that have come out of Asia include the Siamese, Karat, Burman, and Burmese cats. Now, according to UC Davis Veterinary Medicine, there are 8 distinct domestic cat racial groups: Western Europe, Egypt, East Mediterranean, Iran, Iraq, India, South Asia, East Asia. Now, what I glean from this info is that as cats migrated to different parts of the world, they adapted to climate, food, environment, and began to adopt traits that helped them in these environments. As humans started to get involved, the idea for breeding for traits probably took hold. According to Cat World, the very first cat show was held at St. Giles Fair in Winchester, the UK, in 1598. Although there was very little information about this cat show, there was no award for best breed. Instead, there were awards for best ratter or best mouser. I do hate to know how this was determined. Even further interesting is that the first breed to be exhibited in the United States was the Maine Coon, who competed for the title of Maine State Champion Coon Cat at the local Skowhegan Fair held by New England farmers in the 1860s. The first modern-day cat show in the UK took place at the Crystal Palace, London, in July 1871. In Canada, according to the Canadian Encyclopedia.ca, the first recorded cat show, 2-day event with one officiating judge, was held in 1906 in Toronto. Today, there are many cat fancier organizations and many cat shows, just as there are breeds. According to catster.com, the most popular cat breeds in 2024 are Ragdoll, Maine Coon, Devon Rex, Exotic Shorthair, and Persian. I have done spotlight episodes on the Ragdoll and the Maine Coon if you would like to learn more on the top 2 breeds. And the most popular cat breed in the world for 2024 is the Ragdoll, coming in first for 4 years in a row. Now, one thing I think that is important to talk about is the huge overpopulation of cats. Cats are pretty good at breeding, and it doesn't take long before you have kittens having kittens. Many cats begin life as a feral cat, as their mom finds a box somewhere to have her kittens. And if there's no human intervention, the kittens are raised either in abandoned buildings, fields, under a dumpster, you name it. A feral will not want human contact, and once an adult, if caught, may never really adapt to living inside with a human. As Cats.com points out, although they are wild, feral cats are still technically domesticated cats. These are cats that have had no human contact, and how they ended up in this cycle is usually through being born to a feral or stray cat, and then the kittens are raised feral. Now, a stray cat will be a cat that has had a home, but for many reasons ends up outside fending for itself. Stray cats will often join a feral cat colony. As they say, strength in numbers. So, although feral cats are products of the domesticated cat, they are considered wild. For this reason, feral cats do not do well at a shelter. As Cat.com states, this is why trapping them and trying to surrender them to a shelter is not an ideal thing to do to help them. Sadly, many cats arrive at shelters will be euthanized due to limited funding and overcrowding. And surrendering a feral cat, which is often deemed unadoptable, often seals this fate. What many organizations do, however, is trap the adults, get them spayed or neutered, and then return them to the colony. If there are kittens that have been weaned, the rescuers will take the kittens into foster, and these cats will be able to be socialized and adopted. The adults, however, will not. On the occasion, a stray will be noticed in a feral colony, as it will have learned to meow when it sees a human, and may be more engaging seeing a human. Also, as Cats.com mentions, life on the streets is very tough on a stray cat who once had a roof over their head and always knew where their next meal was coming from. And their coat certainly reflects their desperation. Feral cats, however, appear well-groomed with shiny coats that are well cared for. This is just the difference of knowing how to live outside and having to deal with living outside. Despite the fact that feral cats do not do well in a shelter, sometimes there is a possibility to rehabilitate a feral, but it will take a lot of patience, understanding, and love. I'll tell you my feral cat story. When I was about 18 years old, living in the city, we had a garage where the door would not quite shut completely. One day, I saw this really big gray cat going under the door and into the garage. I went into the side man door and to see if the cat was in there. Well, he'd either hid or shot out before I could see him. Anyway, I kept seeing this guy going into the garage, and after a bit of time, snuck into the side door, and there he was, lying on top of the car. Of course, as soon as he saw me, he slowly got up and shot out the door. So I started leaving him food, and eventually he'd let me stay watching him while he ate. And over several months, he actually let me touch his head. Was this cat feral? Or was he a stray that became feral? He was big, a real tom cat, unneutered. So very possibly a feral. Well, time came that changed the tide when I went to feed him and he was lying on the car and he had a terrible gash across his head between his ear. He let me pick him up and take him inside. I cleaned his wound and put antiseptic on it and a bandage. He had surrendered. He wanted help. I kept doctoring his wound and it healed and we got to know each other better. Then, on a hot summer night with the windows open, he created a big hole in the screen and let himself out. I found him back in the garage. You would think that was the end of the story, but it wasn't. I took him back inside, fed him, bathed him, believe it or not, and set him back up with comfy blankets. This time, it stuck. The vet neutered him and gave him shots, and that cat became my person. He was an amazing cat, and I'm so glad he came into my life. He was big and gray and pretty feral time. I named him Greystoke, like Lord Greystoke, Legend of Tarzan. According to cats.com, animal rescue experts categorize these wild house cats into 3 distinct groups: feral, semi-feral, and socialized. Maybe Greystoke was semi-feral. If he was, he really embraced being a house kitty. In my area, many people have what is called barn cats. These are colonies of cats that live in someone's barn, and their job is to keep the mice down, just like how their ancestors ingratiated themselves to humans in the first place. Barn cats have a wide level of care depending on the humans. Some barn cats are well cared for and get good food, are spayed or neutered, have their shots, and are generally looked after. Some barn cats get low-end food, but at least are spayed or neutered. Some barn cats get food, but that's about it, so you will often hear of barn cats with kittens. And then, of course, more kittens, and a source of contribution to the cat overpopulation. Some barn cats are quite socialized, and some are more semi-feral. Life for a barn cat is a crapshoot. It just depends on how they lucked out with the particular barn they showed up to. So, it is really interesting to see how cats have evolved from wild cats into cuddly companions. On the whole, cats are pretty resilient, as they make the best of things when life throws them a curve. Feral cats tap into their ancestral memories and live off the land and take care of themselves like their ancestors did. Cats that end up going from a couch floof to the streets may not fare as well as their feral cousins, but they do survive. Either way, cats have been with us for at least 12,000 years, so they must be doing something right. Check out my episode on animals in war, and you can read about some cats that became pretty well known for their efforts during both great wars. See, it's amazing what cats can do. And if you want a real fun read about cats, check out my episode on cats and their mysterious ways. You might just find some answers to why your cat does the things that it does. Because as I say, knowing is caring.
Thank you for listening to Val Talks Pets. Please remember to follow or subscribe to ensure that you never miss an episode. To really help the show and to make it easier for others to find, please rate and review each episode that you find interesting and helpful. And don't forget that you can also email me at val@valtalkspets.com with topics you would like me to address or with any questions you may have. Also, check out my website at valtalkspets.com and let me know what you think and how we can improve upon it. Thanks for caring.